If you show this publicly, you're open for a lawsuit. Okay?
I don't want you guys to be envious, but I have this 3D puzzle to work on soon. But I was just getting done with my Star Wars Scrabble. I was playing here with my little friends. And you can see I've come up with some cracking words today. I've got computer, generated, oh, there's fakery. This is great, isn't it? Set. I mean, some say, it's something to do with sunset or set on a TV studio. Generated, computer generated. And then there's sex. So there's some pretty cool. I even got NASA. Some people would say that's not really fair because it's National Aeronautical and Space Agency. NASA days, acts. So I've done really well, I think. Tamp, that's like to tamp down or to tamper with, a bit like doctoring, I suppose, to doctor your accounts. They become fakery. That's a great word, fakery. And then there's actors. I've got water levels. Well, yeah, that's what I got down at the bottom here. The baseline is that water levels is my last word. I did actually, I'm not sure if I can count curvature. You see, because curvature has kind of gone off the edge here. But I thought, you know what? It's only me and my buddies here. Who's going to bother to notice? Eh? They're not going to complain. Hello, friends. I love these guys so much. I look forward to the day when we can also travel to space, actually. I've got a new book here that I'm, not the one on nuclear war. Obviously, that's terribly frightening, and I believe everything that's in there. So, no, it's this one. Have you guys got this one? It's the new one from Mike Constantine with a foreword from Charlie Duke. I mean, everybody knows Charlie Duke. So this book is incredible because what Mike Constantine has done, and he's had it like signed off with contributions from moonwalkers Alan Bean, Edgar Mitchell, Charlie Duke, as I said, and Harrison Schmidt. I mean, this is a well researched and certainly a highly credible book. Now, what Mike has done, he's a graphic designer from England, from London specifically, and he is well known to these heroes of ours. And so, with their permission, basically, he's done is he's stitched a number of pictures together. And I've never seen it like this, and this is why it's so exciting to see two separate photographs taken, but now spliced together perfectly. So well that, of course, Charlie and these other chaps are more than happy with it. Let's take a little look. The three lights that I've got there, I'm sure I could try not to make that too much of a problem, but this is what they say. Obviously, the astronauts undertook to capture thousands of high-quality photographs with their 70mm Hasselblad mounted to their chest, which was actually an impressive feat, taking these pictures. A large number of the pictures were made up of panoramic sequences whereby the astronaut would stand in one spot, then turn in a 360-degree circle whilst triggering the shutter. So they're individual photos, but they could be laid side by side to form a panoramic mosaic. So now, with Mike Constantine's digital technology, he's assembled over 50 panoramas for this book. They're high quality and completely seamless, which is going to be phenomenal to see. Each covers a double-page spread and has a detailed description. Several of the panoramas also have first-hand accounts and memories from the men who were there. So, this is legit. I'm really excited. Let's get into this. So we've got a foreword by Charlie Duke. He was a pilot on the 16th lunar module. Some information on the camera and timeline, stuff like that. Obviously, such a famous, I get goosebumps when I see this image. I get so excited. Oh, look, there's a lot of lighting there, but obviously not a problem on the moon because there's only one light source on the moon. And that obviously is our massive sun. So he goes, he tells us about Commander John Young touching down. And then we spent 20 hours outside during 3 EVAs. We gathered samples of petrified wood. And, sorry about the lights. We drilled, we probed, and we rate the lunar surface. Those were taken as single shots. A large number of them were part of this panoramic sequence, which we know they'd take about 20 pictures. You get a good impression of how terrain changes from the almost flat Sea of Tranquility on Apollo 11 through to the magnificent valley of Taurus Littrow on Apollo 17, as mission planners became more confident in landing amongst ever more mountainous surroundings. So this is Charlie Duke, and he says the Panoramas is a great resource that really captures what it actually looked like on the lunar surface. In particular, for me, seeing the pages from Apollo 16 really brought back wonderful memories. Mike has done a really great job in turning what started as dozens of separate photos, and turning them into beautiful panoramas, which, when compiled together in this book, will help to carry on the legacy of Apollo for generations to come. Okay, well, we all know this. 20th July, a day we'll never forget. 1969, Neil becomes the first human. Is it Strongarm or Armstrong? I can never remember. And it was that other Armstrong that was such a deceiver, wasn't he? Lance Armstrong. His Live Strong became like a noose around his neck. It turned out he'd been lying to us for years. Shame for him, eh? And this is what President Jimmy Carter set out 8 years earlier, landing a man on the moon and returning him safely to Earth. It was an astonishing achievement, and one that we wouldn't be able to obviously achieve again, but there were 400,000 people involved in the program, and all of them, knew everything from right to the top, to the top table. All of them got clued in. They were sitting in the boardroom, in the back room, all of the time, so they knew exactly what was going on, and were very involved in the whole thing. Millions of people, watched the greatest moment in mankind's history, and this is one of the most famous images of all time, the visor shot. So let's have a look at some of the panoramas. Oh, but first, a quick reminder, this is the Hasselblad. It's a very, you don't have a visor to look through, or you just kind of point and shoot and hope you've got it all in focus. I guess it all got taken care of in this training. See, this is them training with what looks like a scaled down version of the lunar lander. This is clearly not the lunar lander. What? Surveyor 3 mock-up. Alan Bean training with Surveyor 3. I mean, this is, clearly space ready. I won't look at the detail too closely, but that's clearly space ready, as is the spacesuit, which I'm sure he tested. I haven't been able to find any videos or any proof of that, but obviously they tested them before they went to space, really. So yeah, every movement on the lunar surface is carefully planned by the director at Mission Control. It's a little bit like, I suppose, if you were, performing in a play. Every actor, everybody in every part of it needs to know what's going to happen at any time. And this is like that. I mean, it has to be so, so well trained for. They train hundreds and hundreds of times, the crew and all these other people involved. I remember the guy who ran it said, our training is so good that, the people involved wouldn't actually be able to tell whether it was real or not. So here we have a first panoramic assembly from 16 frames. We'll go and have a look at them. These frames were then loaded into Adobe Photoshop. I mean, it's not CGI, of course. It's kind of, they're taking real photographs, and then, you obviously have to stitch them together. They may not be, as you can tell, exactly at the same height, because it's close to zero gravity there. Things are floating around. Iconic. Whose cable that is lying down there. I assume they had to, if they were using a video camera, they would have to have used a cable connecting it to some device here, possibly. That's probably what that is. It might be the same camera that they set up to film the lunar lander taking off, because obviously they filmed that and got the footage to the lunar lander before it got too far away. So I assume they put like a length of cable, maybe 500 meters or something like that. It doesn't weigh very much now, it's in space, right? So they could have taken a mile up and then just dropped that so that the feed came to the lunar lander, because they wouldn't have been able to bounce it all the way to the craft that was using slingshot to go around the moon. And this is how, this is their movements around. This is where they land and stuff like that. It's all been proven anyway, because we've seen images provided by some of these other space agencies. So, they'd tell us if there was any problems with that. This is the first panorama captured by the Apollo 11. It was taken 1 hour and 17 minutes, which is 77 minutes after touchdown. And while the crew was still inside the studio capsule. And this is pretty cool. I like this photo. The panorama essentially shows how flat and featureless the landing site was. There wasn't a lot of, like background here. It wasn't hills or anything like that. It's just like you can see a very clear horizon line where they're going over the curve of the globe. The reason it seems brighter here and say less bright over here is because of the lensing inside of the capsule. Because they had certain protective lensing, it actually, deepened reduced the amount of light that was able to come in, and of course only this hot spot around where they were is what you see. So to the right, the shadow of the elm, above that, a very distant hill, and to the far right of a boulder field, which is suspected to be debris from the impact that created West Crater, a large crater about 500 meters from landing site. This is where they, close to running out of fuel, they were able to touch down just before they got themselves into trouble. It's interesting how, like, the shadow line here is kind of running this way, and it's running this way here, but this way here. Like, these shadows appear to be sort of inward pointing to the center like this, and then this seems to have a shadow like the light's coming from this side, but these clearly are pointing this way. I think it's a panorama effect. When they render these things into panoramas, some of the positioning must get taken out of line, because like for this one here, you can clearly see this is my line here. Oh, let me use another one of these. I can possibly just put it on the line there. It's something like that. And then it's pointing clearly like the light's coming from that side. And then with this one here, the light is apparently coming from this direction. And again, that's probably just a rendering effect. I mean, the light on that one appears weirdly. The shadows appear weirdly to be coming from this side. And then as I come over here, coming from this direction. Anyway, I mean, this is such exciting footage, and I'm so grateful that these astronauts have signed this off, because it is such a wonderful memento. This panorama was captured by Buzz Aldrin. You might remember Buzz.
Well, you're talking to the wrong guy. Why don't you talk to the administrator at NASA? We're passengers. We're guys going on a flight.
I remember what he said to a schoolgirl a few years ago, maybe 2015. So she's probably late teens now, but I wonder if she still feels this. She asked the question, why haven't we been back? And he said, well, the truth is we never went. Something like that. Clearly I think that was, they did a BBC on him, and they just simply cut and paste things that he'd said, and they can do that now with AI. They can fake these things. I mean, they didn't have the same technology back in this time. How we could do, I mean, we can send Sandra Bullock up to space, right? That's interesting. Those are the same lines, right? I would say that one's not quite. I mean, I'm splitting hairs here. I know my friends who are purists of the following. I meet them sometimes at these conventions that I go to, which I spend all my spare money on going to these conventions, and I've met some wonderful people, but sometimes they don't like that people point out that there's clearly shadow things, but none of us have been to the moon, so how would we know how the light of this incredible sun is working on a thing that has no atmosphere? Light is scattering all over the place. Let me get something other than that. Oh, my Scrabble things will work quite nicely, I suppose. I can put that there. That's about right. I mean, it's not, I think I'm being fair when I say that, but it's interesting how this light source is casting a perfect shadow for this actor not here, and obviously this is a panorama. So, he stood, as they say, in one position and turned 360 degrees. And it's a funny thing how the light is sort of right behind him here, throwing a perfect 12 o'clock, or, right morning shadow, if you like. Whilst these ones, well, they clearly have some kind of powerful lighting going on from this side onto this iconic wartime, flag. It's not a wartime flag, is it? It doesn't have the tassels on it. And, the flapping in the wind thing, that's got to do with electrostatics that were brought from Earth that were still playing out. And I think, being around all of this tinfoil, the sun playing off it and stuff, it was causing electromagnetic sparking. It's clean, aren't they? It's amazing the technology that they had back in the 1960s that you'd think, well, why don't we have this material today? Because whatever material that is, it is, it's withstood space. It looks like one of those ductile, those little grabby tape, those things that we use. What do they call them? The plastic things, ties. Those plastic ties. It looks like that. Obviously not, because it wouldn't withstand the heat of space. The temperatures are in the thousands of degrees. So all of this, it looks a little bit kind of. It doesn't look as stable and as strong as that thing we saw them testing in the with the spacesuit. It doesn't look as strong, but this is, here we are in a vacuum of space on the moon with odd directions of lighting. It's a really I think an artifact of the panoramic effect. Whenever I take a panorama, I have to pay more attention to my panoramas. Am I also getting this amount of bending of light? I haven't really looked at this very well, but now that I've noticed it, I'm seeing that the light is right behind Neil. This was captured by Neil. So this has to be Buzz. This is the big Buzz. You remember Buzz?
Well, you're talking to the wrong guy. Why don't you talk to the administrator in NASA? We're passengers. We're guys going on a flight.
Now, Buzz clearly is highly illuminated. And this part of the craft is highly illuminated. All receiving light, and the shadow is naturally going that way. And then as Mr. Armstrong turns and turns, I find it's interesting. That's not over here. Oh, look at the shadow of this one here. See that? I'm just going to put my marker there and just zoom back out again, and it's a very interesting conundrum. It's as though there was lighting coming from the right-hand side during this part of the 360 degree rotation. He's taken 20 snaps, and our computer generated tech whiz has been able to pull them all together. So we're looking at one seamless horizon. There can be no question of that. The lighting there is kind of betraying, that's better. That lighting, well, I guess it's that line, which is, you could argue that that's pointing towards him. You could argue that. That seems to be pointing away, but you could argue that. It's just that the angle on here versus the angle on here doesn't fit with my experience of the panorama. But again, we are talking about 1969, 1970 technology here, and again, even that, it could be. Well, it could be a mirage. So this one's weird, right? This one's weird because it seems like we're almost in the same photo. I'm sure this could be more than one stitched together. I wouldn't say it isn't. But I think that's a shadow. I don't know what's creating it. It doesn't appear to be absolutely straight, but oftentimes if you're going down a bank, then a straight line can be bent due to the embankment. But that's the kind of line. I don't want to shadow it. And then, of course, there is a powerful hotspot and a somewhat different point of light. It would seem, if this isn't something else, it could be like, I have heard Buzz talk about seeing aliens on the moon. So this is possibly an alien that's sneaking up behind him, and he doesn't know that because he's got the light behind him, he's got the Hasselblad in front of him, and he's in a bulky spacesuit that It's never been tested in a vacuum chamber, so it's got to be pretty scary and hairy for them. This shadow is weirdly actually pointing towards his side. Who is taking
Mr. Seibel, you do not deserve answers.
Neil Armstrong took time out of scheduled activities to venture over to Little West Crater, as it was the largest feature on Apollo 11's landing site. The crater, that's 30 meters and 4 meters deep. 30 meters across and 4 meters deep. That's it? Okay. All right. Well, anyway, they are on the moon and things are heavier. I mean, lighter. So it's going to be more difficult for them to navigate such a thing. And I mean, the changing light sources here must be a real a hazard for them, because one minute you think you're in the shade and the next minute the light is in your eyes, blah, blah, blah. And I mean, the light is, to create this, I mean, one could argue this feature is hard to discern, and so the shadow that it's casting might be unfair on the light source, but it feels to me like the light source has to be in this kind of area, which is, funny enough, it's a very different line to everything else you've seen. That one there, that shadow there, that's kind of coming towards me, and this one here, the light is definitely on this side. And yet here, in the same panoramic collection signed off by these astronauts, we're seeing very different lines of lighting. I've heard about this thing of lighting before, but it's never been, the shadows. I've never really paid much attention to it, because it is possible that there's glare up there. You know how bright the sun is. I mean, the moon is. The moon is phenomenally bright, because that line doesn't match, does it? These lines are here are pointing sort of this way. They're clearly pointing this way, right? Whereas this one is pointing this way. I'm going to let that one go, because I feel like, they're a long way from. This is so risky, and they had all of this in the craft with them. That space I've obviously been to the museum. I've been to Johnson Space Center. I go to every NASA event that I can. I almost got to shake Tim Peake's hand one time. It was so thrilling. Much smaller actually than I expected, and it's funny he wasn't wearing that very super thick belt that he always seemed to wear when he was doing spacewalks. Anyway, I mean not spacewalks, the one where they flip head over heels, kind of like how they do it on the circus, but just they're doing it in space. But obviously I've not been in. No one's allowed to go in anymore actually. Even credentialed people do not get to really inspect this, and it's one of the few things that's remaining, because obviously all of the telemetry, all of the evidence of this historic moment got lost, I think, or it was sold at a garden sale or something, like a garage sale, because NASA was their budget was being trimmed down to $66.6 million a day, I think, which is not a lot when you think about what they've achieved. I mean, we've got microwave ovens, they're good for you. They actually invented the Temper mattress as well, or like the memory foam. So that's incredible, really. And there's plenty more things like the biro, and some awesome music. There's that song by REM. I'll play that at the end. So yeah, how they had all of this, and then I suppose because they had room for this on later missions, they were able to bring the Dune buggy up as well, which is quite fantastical. So let's move on. Apollo 12, Ocean of Storms. This gives us a very clear image of the light side of the moon. Obviously it was super bright. It doesn't look that bright there, but it is super bright. This has been dulled down to give us the specifics, the mapping. Now, post-landing window panorama. We had one of those from the boys, the first boys, right? So that was cool. They've obviously got the sun behind the craft, and it's throwing a shadow there. Slightly different direction here, but this again could be to do with these heavy pitted craters, which are obviously from meteorites that have come in always directly down. They only make the circles. They never skid across the surface ever. Which is one of those things to do with gravity. Okay, so we've got lighting there. We seem to have lighting throwing itself over the edge of this in this distance, in this direction here. It's not a clear-cut one. There's a lot of damaged terrain here. What's amazing is that thankfully these guys were not being peppered during their Alan Bean. At both ends of the picture are the lunar module's altitude control thruster quads. Wow. Small rockets arranged in banks of 4, which provide thrust to maneuver the spacecraft in roll, pitch, and yaw, like flying. They were not armed and active on the lunar surface, but they fired from time to time during the landing approach as Pete maneuvered to find a relatively smooth landing spot. Wow. So when they fired, the sound was transmitted through the frame of the lunar module. They made it sound like a shotgun was going off right outside of my window. Well, that's funny, isn't it? Because you would have thought if they were moving across the lunar surface, you would expect to see if this was created by them, then they would sort of make a hole and sort of move as the whole, the force of the jet moved. But it does look a little bit like cement. Obviously, it's not building rubble. They would never it could never be building rubble unless what they said about there being aliens on the moon is true. That's possible. Do you think they made many improvements for the craft? I guess not, because it was so successful they didn't have to. So maybe that tie on there is still the same from the earlier mission. It looks like a plastic tie, but of course it's not. Again, the feet are, despite those powerful thrusters, digging up huge swathes, huge chunks, they would say, of ground. It didn't throw any dust up because of the atmosphere and gravity. This little tank outside here isn't obviously there during flight. It's only been mounted there for EVA actions, extravehicular activities. And of course you've got an umbrella upside down here in the event of rain. No, this is not an umbrella upside down. That's ridiculous. Does that look like an umbrella handle to you? Of course not. Does this look like the thing that you release the umbrella with? No, it's got nothing to do with umbrellas. I mean, it's umbrella-like, but of course that's what satellite dishes are. They are umbrella-like, and it's a ridiculous claim that this is just an umbrella. Really. So anyway, let's have a look at the lighting here. Clearly lighting is striking the craft in this way. This panorama was captured by Pete Conrad. It's not a name I'm familiar with. Of course I am. I've got a Pete Conrad pillow. Anyway, he'd actually ventured a short way down inside the surveyor's crater to get into position. It was known as the 8 o'clock panorama because it was taken from the 8 o'clock position relative to the lunar front hatch, which was at the 12 o'clock. I see. So this is going to be, is it going to be that side? Somewhere around there. So anyway, Alan Bean can be seen taking a photograph. Alan Bean. You remember Alan Bean.
Okay. Well, take your stuff and get the fuck out. Why don't you quote me and say it's bullshit?
He was making observations about how deep the footpads had penetrated the lunar soil. Alan Bean, I remember when we touched down, I felt us roll to the side. It gave me a brief scare. After we settled down, I checked the attitude indicator and we were almost perfectly upright. Wow. It's like a gyroscope, I suppose. I wonder what the baseline was when it started. All right, let's have a looky here. Pete Conrad captures this one of Alan. You remember Alan? So that'll be Alan over there. I mean, he's such a, wow, what a legend. I think that they should have called Buzz Lightyear, and they should have called him Alan Bean. Alan Bean! To the moon and back! The thing is, of course, Alan's shadow is coming from a light source, this side of him. I suppose you could say that's his right-hand side. His 3 o'clock position, if you like. And then when I panorama around, boom, now the light is behind me. How? Okay, that can happen. I think that photographic, that can happen. However, I think if I turned, then I would expect to see my shadow in the same line, me shadowed, but with this position from here. Yeah. Peter and I had never seen these irregular cone-shaped mounds in all our geological training on Earth. We did not think they were volcanic vents, but we did not know this. Alan Bean. You remember Alan Bean?
Okay. Well, take your stuff and get the fuck out. Why don't you quote me and say it's bullshit?
Alan also captured this one. Let's have a little looky-see. There's the close-up of the umbrella. I mean the satellite dish. It's funny how it has very umbrella-esque kind of parts to it, doesn't it? This is thanks to the digital quality of this. No, but that's all technical stuff. That got some copper wire around it, so that makes it real. And this little bit here, that can't be. What's that? That's not the releasey thing that you push on. No. Don't get all conspiratorial here. Trinity 4, thinking like you know what you're talking about. This is all bona fide. It's been signed off by the government, signed off by Alan Bean, Neil Armstrong, who never said anything about these being a hoax. I mean, he would have told us, right? There was no way they could strong arm anyone into going along with something. But what we haven't ever really gotten is a clear kind of explanation as to why these lines don't have it seems to have a distant light source, right? But that's because obviously you're like what, 250,000 miles closer to the sun than we are. So that creates a lot of differences that you won't see in a real world situation. I mean, on the Earth. So yeah, that one's. I mean, this looks a little bit. What is this? Apollo 12. Just looks like there's some grease stains on there. I wonder what that is. I mean, obviously they were doing repairs to the craft when they needed to. Sorry, my hand's not that stable, but I think you get the gist. Yeah. This is obviously very high quality welding. So the stuff you'd see on a fighter jet. That's not. Looks like some panels have fallen off there, but that's very unlikely. And these poles, sort of hither and thither, they look kind of like plastic. Poles that you might put a tent up with, something like that. But these are very secretive, high-tech quality materials. Why do you think they came up with Kevlar? Things like that, I mean, you don't know about it. They had technology back in the 1960s that we're just working out today. That's why they could go to the moon then, and we haven't worked it out today. I mean, people say, they say they were CGIing like some of the stuff from the 1970s, and it's like, they didn't have CGI in the 1970s. I mean, this technology was way ahead, and we didn't know what they were using here, these materials here, like these poles. That is, high-tech stuff. But they didn't have CGI back in a way of faking pictures back in the 1970s. There was that guy Stanley Kubrick. He did some, he was pretty powerful in the movie game. And he did, some tricks with cameras and stuff like that. But they wouldn't fake something as important as this, because it would mean the whole of mankind was deceived, and the governments of Russia and America are kind of colluding to hide the truth of the world. So that can't be right. You know what I mean? That can't be how it is. We know for sure that. We know for sure that Neil Armstrong walked on the moon. I'm certain of it, and I actually went to a conference where he was talking one time, and he said this. This is Apollo 14, so we're really moving forward now, and the technology is improving. They've had the experience of a few years of doing this now. They've had a few years of doing this now, so they're getting better at it. But these panoramas don't have. I don't know why we didn't see these panoramas. Edgar Mitchell. I was delighted to be safely on the ground and surprised to see all the pock marks on the lunar surface.
I don't hit people, but you're going to be on the deck unless you get...
I'm heading out. I appreciate it.
And get the hell out of my house.
These were clearly made by ejector from some type of impact. I captured my side of this pan first, then handed the camera over to Alan Shepard to capture it. Alan Shepard captured this pan from a position close to the 4 o'clock side of the lunar module. And they've obviously got their all-important technology here, which is, that'll be what the cable is back to the thing. It'll be this. That's the cable we saw earlier. So it wasn't to the camera, although maybe it's a different cable. What happened to the leg here? It's as though, oh, I can see there's some dirt in front of the foot. Not actually in the foot, but in front of it, and there's some kind of bandaging going on here because it was unnecessary on this side. This didn't need the protection that this affords it. This area here had been strengthened with another secret material, whereas this one had been covered up because, I mean, they must be doing these repairs on the go. I guess they got spare parts as well, you know, that they take with them, just in the event that something like that was to happen. Oh, I see, look, there's an actual crater hole underneath that. So that was obviously when it came down, it kicked up all of that dust. But maybe that's what happened to the gold tin foil here, was that it fell off there as well. It was obviously a rough landing. I hope they're okay. I mean, this here looks like, you know, that lagging they put on pipes to stop them from freezing. It's probably the similar thing, but obviously designed by NASA, small, you know, 400, 500 million, to provide protection against the insane elements. You can see it looks like it's a little rain damaged here, as though they came probably through a bit of a rain cloud that might exist. What else can we see here? That's not broken, it just looks, it's just the lighting on it. And those stitches, of course, are space stitches. They, I mean, those will be filters. They're a very important part of it. They're connected here by these secret rods. It's just incredible technology that we're seeing here. I mean, that's not a hole. Yeah, that's not a tear in there. That's it's like a listening device that they've got there. And these are those Christmas crackers, retro firing rockets that can control the yaw, pitch, and all other sorts of things. See, there they are there again. Very, very important piece of kit. And you can see they're burnt out from the landing. But yeah, all in all, it's an amazing craft. When the public on Earth tuned in to Walter Cronkite and Jules Bergman, and the pictures being transmitted came from this camera. And because of the problem with the TV camera on Apollo 12, our pictures would be the first full transmission of color from the moon. Really, that's astounding. That's astounding. So, I mean, it's not really fair to kind of criticize this guy for having a shadow this way, whilst the same photographer has a shadow going this way. And then the lunar lander has a shadow going this way. It's so useful to see these panoramas in digital sort of perfection, really. One couldn't argue that they haven't been spliced together with the right alignment. I'm sure that our artist here, again, you know, when you put them together, the shadows just move naturally. And maybe it is an artifact of digital tampering. The long-ranging retro reflector. Oh my gosh, the square grid light object. I've always been so excited by this. We can send a light from Earth to this thing. The LRRR consists of a series of special reflectors which always reflect an incoming light beam back in the direction it came from. That's perfect. So these reflectors were illuminated by laser beams aimed through large telescopes on Earth. An observation of the reflected beam provided a measurement of the round-trip distance between the Earth and the Moon. Because they didn't know that having been there, they needed to send the light. And what's great about this is that we have the technology now to receive that, because as they'll tell us at Jodrell Bank or wherever it is that they send this this flicker of light out, they get like a photon back. You know, they say, oh, beep, we've seen a photon, and that's obviously come back from the moon, and it took exactly the time we would expect it to take if it is the distance we estimated it to be. So that's Apollo 14. These are so enlightening. So we got a shadow there. So he's got the light behind him. Actually, one could say this was. Could one say this was possible in a situation where this is the sun? We all know. And if you go and stand back from your car and you have your boyfriend go and stand over there, off to the distance, and it can't be more than 50 meters, I suspect less, but if you do that, and then maybe put a flag in the ground over here, see if you can get like the shadow to form this way and then fall over your car in this direction, and whilst this flag on your right here is throwing a shadow there. That would be interesting to see if we can create that in reality. I could go on, but in the interests of keeping this a fairly short video, I think I've gone through quite a lot of the missions here. I don't know if anything. We actually got a real rock here. It's interesting how the rocks can become problematic for the panoramas, because you can see how this rock is clearly illuminated from the back end there and then throwing its little shadow this way. Whilst these ones are throwing their shadow inward towards the cameraman, suggesting that the shadow should be somewhere around here for this picture. But there's the lunar lander, so there's obviously a real photo of the moon. In fact, I can see one of the heroes, Edgar Mitchell, captures this with Alan Shepard operating a camera close to the limb. I'm surprised that he didn't think, you know what, I'm going to stick this camera pointed towards the Earth, and then for like an hour while Edgar is off romping around in Panorama, the north of the lunar module, I'll just film the Earth. They told me not to film the Earth because it would frighten people to see how insignificant we are. They don't want us just to think we're insignificant. We're the highest evolved monkeys that ever walked here, since obviously not the aliens. So this one's really, I think this is more likely to be just one photograph. There might be some stitching together. There are some slightly dissonant kind of lines there. I wonder if the Star Wars people ever had this kind of trouble with lighting. I'm not going to bother with this stand-up EVA panorama. Let's look for something a little bit more interesting. I actually haven't looked through this book before. I thought I'd just take it on the fly and see what came up. I've got nothing to hide. I know we landed on the moon. And, this line here, although it looks like the beginning of a set line, and we are getting to Apollo 15, so, I suppose there's more money and more building on the previous set required, because you can't really go onto the same set. You're not going to go to the same place and land. So here we've got, quite a lot of really soft-looking mountains and so on, and I don't know, that's quite a lot of, people say it's this cement and so on, but that's a lot of cement. No one could bring in that amount of cement, and if you did, I suppose you'd want to have some breathing apparatus, otherwise you'd be breathing in this toxic stuff. The line on this one, I suppose, is a bit weird, but these two pictures are right next to each other, so how could that be? It's interesting to see like a crepuscular ray, though. Let's have a look at my lighting in. There's actually a crepuscular ray forming here, which, this is cloud. You wouldn't get a crepuscular, right? But this is clearly seeing a lot of light. This area here. Yeah, this one's not particularly interesting. There is what seems like a demarcation line here that I noticed. There, not there. Here. And this has been cut out of that shot. I wonder why. Oh, you can see it's like landed at a bit of an angle here. That's must be risky for a takeoff because you can imagine like this thing doesn't really. It's got a powerful rocket going to just thrust it up, but not perpendicular to the local area. Obviously, on the globe ball moon, there's no one perpendicular. Everybody's, so maybe they thought they were going to land a little bit more on the side of the moon. Oh well. They've got quite a lot of. They must have the. This is Apollo 13. They must have the lunar lander now with all these tracks. Doing a lot of mileage. See how much tracking is on here. 15. No, I guess so. Skip the picture. He's not falling over, so we've got some interesting footage of the guys falling over. What's that fell over? It looks like it's like a three-legged chair upside down, but it's obviously doing space. Oh, it's this that's making the track, because they had a little rover, one of the early rovers. That's what it is. It's not. They were not as ambitious as the other guys with the golf clubs. That's not the golf club. No, that's science. That's science. And this is not a connection to a wire, like some people say. That's ridiculous. This is obviously an antenna. Obviously. This is not a tow rope. You hear some ridiculous things on the internet. People, they watch 2 videos and they think that they know all about the moon landing. I've been studying it for most of my life. And, I've got memorabilia that would make your head spin. I got so much stuff from these guys. Yeah, so I'm not seeing a lot of contending. I mean, there's already a bit of shadowish coming from that direction, which could be, the top of anything. So I can't say whether it's a mismatch with this. But it is interesting how on the moon, because of it being the moon and it's a long way away and in the vacuum of space, you get these sort of hills with a very clear. I love nature on Earth. Do a lot of hiking and taking photos and so on, but this line that you get here, I don't see that often. Sometimes when I go to the theatre, I've seen that, but in the sort of world, I really don't see that. And that's quite a long panorama. So it's like a basin, a flat basin. Perhaps they had a mud flood in here or something. Oh, they they do have the lunar buggy. It's hard to tell from the shadows here. It seems that this boot print is receiving light from this side and throwing a shadow into the print, like from here. Whereas it appears that most of the light is coming from behind here. These shadows here, it's like we're not seeing these sides, the far side of it being illuminated as you would expect. If the light is here and I come across here, you'd expect the shadow to go the other way. It almost seems as if the light in this picture has come from the other side. That's panoramas for you, eh? Oh, that is some astounding landscape. I mean, the line of that, this even is this? Yeah, this is there. I would say is quite a sort of defined line. Lunar landscape, eh? I have to say the lighting in this one doesn't immediately throw huge red flags, but this is surprising environment, isn't it? Dave Scott with his 500mm lens equipped Hasselblad. I love using that word, Hasselblad. It is, makes me feel smart. Actually, truthfully, that I can say Hasselblad. And when I tell my, normie friends who don't believe in the moon landing about the Hasselblad, I know they're impressed. You know what a Hasselblad is? Oh, yeah. And I'll be able to tell them I know a bit more about how when you stitch panoramas together, you can't expect the lighting to follow traditional rules of photography. Don't expect that. You know, I mean, this is Jim Irwin capturing this pan close to rim. Crater. Right. Okay. I'm not going to bother too much with this one. It's a little, you know, it may not be many panoramas stitched together. We're at Apollo 16, the big ones. To finish it off, you know, eventually I think at 17 they'll take a picture for us of the Earth, which is, you know, it took them a little while. If I was running it, I probably would have said, you know, let's go up on the first one, let's put aside a few hundred photos. We've got thousands to spare, but let's put a few hundred aside for just like a whole lot of, what's that? Just like a whole lot of, I think that's an alien. That. I wonder if it was. Okay. Yes, it's this is. Oh, I can't read. Oh, man. They don't say. What is that? Deployment. Oh. So, yeah, I mean, that's odd. Isn't it? And then these seem to have whoa, it's like amazing that again it comes back to filters. So it's dark there because filters. It's light here because obviously when we look at the moon, the full moon, the sun's on it, it's all white, very bright, much brighter than this. Obviously they're filters. But here it's not so bright because that's science, and filters say that we lose luminosity the deeper we look through the filter. This rim is catching light from here, from this side, of course, and so is that. I'm not going to argue with that, really. I mean, you know, there's a shadow there. It's probably coming from the same light source. Well, this, I think, shouldn't be here. That's probably just like a slip up by the technical team here. Just some kind of shadow there, which doesn't fit with the incoming. Plum was smaller. Oh, dear me. Okay, well, I'm obviously going to do some research as to how panoramic images work, because as far as I'm concerned, you know, I would have expected, honestly, in the panoramas that I've taken, that the lighting would be, you know, famous photo, and I think the lines are probably quite good on this one, actually. Although that stone there doesn't. No. I have to accept this one as legit, and you know, Apollo 16, they definitely went on the moon. So, what have we got here? Oh, it looks like they got one of those portaloos, yeah, for collecting samples. And they're sitting chilling on there, having a little picnic maybe. I wonder if the lights are odd on this one, because there the light is throwing your shadow there. Then not so much there. And then it seems to be on his back over there, but perspective sometimes can make these things. Wow, there's this line here where the terrain goes from sort of fairly defined. Oh, I'm going off. Fairly defined to less well defined on this line. I think this is part of a sea. It doesn't have the same. You know, if you've got a light source here, it's likely to, you know, any sort of stones or whatever are going to throw shadows over this area. But of course, there's none here because this is how the light works on the moon. And of course, there's no debris. This debris field here is not there. There's none of that, so there's no shadows whatsoever over this area here, even though it's an equal amount of light over the surface, as we know. Oh, this one's brilliant. I can't see any flaws with that picture. It's astounding what this guy has done. Whoa, don't be blinded by the light on his back. That's very much... Oh, it's more this side, to be fair. Yeah, it's more this side. The light is coming from this angle, which is why these are throwing shadows. Well, that one seems to be throwing the shadow towards us now, but that's not possible. This it's just the way that the rock is shaped that's making the light bend. It might be a form of refraction. So there we go. Nice shadow there coming in on that angle from the light source. They've changed the umbrella. It's improved now. Whoa. I wonder if this is the same picture. The light source is very different here. Again, we sort of got all of this shadow being cast by the debris field here, and then as you move here onto this hillock above this line over here, there's no shadow. There's pock mark. There's like, looks like shadow, but it's not deep shadow like this. Again, it's being on the moon. The gravity of the moon is different, and so light doesn't bend in the way that you would expect it to on Earth. You know, like when we look at distant things that are behind a mile or so of curvature, they're being lifted up. You know, so this is a big debris field. So obviously you're going to see a lot of shading here, shadows. Not so much after this line. It's like the shadows, there's no stones there above the line. I think that's where like a dust settled and there was no like heavy rocks in it. That's what that is. These panoramas are really insightful. Yeah, it's so darkest part of the moon, isn't it? I suppose when you look at the moon, there are light parts and dark parts, and I guess this is how that's explained. I love that we've got a theory for everything now in space travel. You can actually get a degree in imagining what space might be like, which I think is, you know, I would definitely be up for that kind of degree if I was young enough. You know, I'm obviously much older now, and this is all beyond me, but still brings a tear to my eye, the magnificence of this this achievement by mankind, and that anyone could mock it or claim it wasn't real. I'd say, you know, shame on you. Shame on you. Look, is that not the blue marble right there? Oblate, spinning. That is all the proof you need. I mean, they said, oh, you know, Earth can't be up in space and blah, 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 and it's not moving, all that stuff. But look, and there's even a star there, or a couple of stars just sort of hanging around. Or maybe it's Starlink. No, that's a bit early for Starlink right there. That's coming. So, no, I mean, the naysayers are clearly just jealous or lack basic kind of intellect, you know, ability to kind of read a book and remember it. And I mean, teacher when I was 6-7 years old said, oh, Dave, Trinity, you are so good at this science stuff, you're one day going to become an astronaut. And ever since then I obviously wasn't able to complete my astronaut training, partly because of my toes. So I see a line here, which is obviously the level of the sea, and then this is the rock coming out of it. A shadow going that way, shadow going this way actually, not that way. But no, there seems to be some. This is Apollo 17, so they found some more detail on the moon now. This is now, they've had quite a while to really scout around and find landscape that's, you know, a little bit more interesting than just a flat field of dust. So Harrison Schmidt. So he's also put some stuff in here, which you can read if you want. I'm going to take this to bed with me tonight and, well, just, quietly spend some time with these astronauts, and they traveled 36 kilometers. Gene Cernan, yes, he's the guy. Oh, he's giving it a test drive. So, wow, I guess they tested it on the Earth, but there's a test drive for here. Oh, look, I think they've repaired, if this is the same leg, they've obviously fixed some of those earlier problems that they were having. So that's pretty clear cut. That that's progress right there. And we can see, you can see things have developed quite a lot actually. Again, secret technology. We shouldn't ask. It is our money that they spend, but we shouldn't ask, because otherwise the Russians will find out, and we don't want the Russians getting up to the moon. I mean, they've tried, but they gave up actually. They realized it was too hard, and they didn't need to bother anymore, because it was done and dusted. There was no more. There was nothing to do. I mean, it's really all down at the Arctic and the Antarctic, really, isn't it? That's where they put a lot of effort into stopping us from going with our Arctic Treaty. So there you go. I mean, the lunar seismic profiling experiment, the heat flow experiment, the lunar surface gravimeter experiment, lunar ejector and meteorite experiment, and the lunar atmospheric composition experiment. Right, that's what these are. That's what these are. That's science. Look at that. The pinnacle of our achievements. Gene Cernan, Station 1 Panorama. Oh. I mean, it's amazing for me actually when I look at this photograph, is that there's so much light here on this suit, and the shadow is kind of kicking off that way. You would have expected the shadow to kick that way. That's a funny one, actually. I don't understand that. But again, it could be due to gravity and the way that light bends on the moon. And see how these kind of surfaces are so clean. You got all this debris field and then a perfectly smooth, unshadowed affair over there. So this is super legit. I mean, I'm not even going to question shadows here. There's no question that this is on the moon. I mean, that shadow there, right, is slightly, but I think that's because of a printing error when they brought these two pages together. Because clearly that shadow and this subject are not far from each other. So the shadow should be like that, or given that the light seems to be on the side of his pack, shadow should be like that. Yeah, you can make up your own mind. I'm sure we can learn more about the techniques that we use to pull this off. So, there's that, then there's that, and there's that. It's nice to see them on the panorama. Gene Cernan is back the rover giving Houston a gravimeter reading. Really? So that's how he's talking to Houston. He's got this thing here, which is probably beyond the technology we have today in your smartphone. And even the towers that go up on every street nowadays, which are used to send information from device to device. This, I think, is what they used to phone the president with. And if you could have one of those, you probably have free energy for life. So I said that you're not allowed to have free energy. But I heard them talking about it at one of these conventions I went to. So he looks a little guilty. Look, the shadow going that way. And then the cameraman again seems to have the light directly behind him. Whilst this craft seems to be receiving light mostly from this angle, but yeah, I think if I take the wheel and the shadow from the wheel, I'd probably go with the light from there. I think this is a panoramic bending. It's got nothing to do with stage lighting at all, or this being some kind of backdrop. I think, you know, the people who claim this is fake, have they been to the moon? Have they? No, of course they haven't. And how dare they question what we've been told? Harrison Schmidt, do you think these people lied? The 400,000 people that were involved in coming here? I mean, really? I mean, this rock here, again, is having a light source this way. And he's got a light source this way. I don't know. For me, this is, I mean, I've never seen landscape like this before. Have you? Good thing it's in black. It's not in black and white. Look, it actually looks like a black and white photo with just some color put in. They didn't have technology to do that. So there is no color here. It's this baggage that they got in the back here. Like, seems like some kind of recycling. Were they already recycling? Because obviously we didn't want soda cans left on the moon. So it could be like, yeah, just throw your trash in there, guys. And then we'll pack it up when we go. Or use it as rocket fuel. Let's see if this leg is still repaired. Yes, look at that. It's very strong. Very good. Some other kind of sack of, I guess that's lunar stones. I don't know why the Dutch and the BBC said they were petrified wood. That's complete, misinformation. Like Donald tells us, Donald Trump. He started Space Force, and so he knows the importance of space. And I mean, he had warp speed as well, which of course excited me and my friends, because we, believed in the warp drive and how we're going to eventually, colonize Mars, things like that. So I'm really excited about all of that. Yep. So that's kind of getting us to the end of this. Apollo 17, was this the last one? Oh, maybe there was one more, or this was the last successful one. But these are panoramas that, have been signed off by the NASA people, really. So I think that I've seen enough. I want to take this book to bed. Just, me and my little buddies over here, we'll this. Let me just have a little song. There you go. We have aliens on the moon. Dee-dee-dee-dee. Oops. Sorry, Darth. Yeah, that's it. Awesome. Let's go to bed.